Alvin, Reid, Bradford, Bruns, and Marty Jenkins on 101 ESPN.
They're dropping the puck down at Enterprise Center this evening, and we are dropping the hammer on another ridiculously good weekend of college football ahead. Happy opening day / night, everybody, out there to you in the STL and everywhere else. My man, Alvin Reid. I am Bradford Bruns. This is the College Football Connection. Looking ahead, Alvin, to week number 7, but we would, of course, be remiss if we didn't rep the Blue Note on this day. Blues and Wild tonight, 7 o'clock. Looking forward to another regular season, my man.
Hey, man, this is getting as big as Cardinal opening day based on where the Cardinals are right now.
Loving it.
Hey, no, a lot of Blues buzz. I went to the media luncheon a couple of weeks ago. Fantastic.
Okay.
Tasted a lot of those great foods that they're going to have down there at Enterprise. But, man, there's a palpable buzz about hockey. And, I got to give my man Z credit. He said during his remarks that he said, like, it's not just us. It's people are desperate for, like, any kind of success.
Yeah.
Like St. Louis, he said a lot there. I don't know who all he was talking to. But anyway, go Blues.
Hey,
start off tonight.
You took the words right out of my mouth. The palpable buzz surrounding this town. Of course, our friends over at 101 ESPN, the pregame at 6, puck drop at 7 p.m. with Chris Kerber, your voice of the Blues. But Alvin, let's dig into it. And I'm just going to say, we have 5 marquee matchups to preview on this occasion. We are going to spend, my friend, a disproportionate amount of time on Old MU. And why wouldn't we in this instance? Leading us off, 11 a.m. kickoff, Faroe Field. College game day may not be there again, but SEC Nation in the house because this is gargantuan. Alabama, of course, right now favored once again. This was the case early in the week. Minus 3.5, over-under in this matchup, 51.5. The Tigers had cut it to 2.5, but when you consider everything that is here in play, that is on the table for Mizzou, Alvin, I am adamant that this is the opportunity toward which you have been working really for the better part of the past 2+ seasons. You want the cream of the crop. You're encountering the big behemoth right there this Saturday in your own house, and you haven't won at home against an AP top 10 team since all the way back in 2010. Now, Alabama looked darn good for stretches of that game versus Vanderbilt, stretches of the game a couple of weeks ago against Georgia. But you still, Mizzou fans, they should be bullish because they're thinking back to week number 1, that collapse against Florida State. You have Bama, you have Kalen DeBoer in your own house. It's going to be fascinating.
Well, it comes down to whether Missouri could continue running the ball the way they have with Hardy. If he has a big day, I think Missouri has a big day. And by big day, I mean 150 plus.
He has to.
That's kind of where I'm coming from.
I believe so.
I don't know where Alabama is. Are they that team that passed the ball so well against Georgia? Are they that team that played so well against Georgia? Georgia's got a tough game kind of coming up, today. I mean, this weekend. Mm-hmm. In that, maybe we'll see something about them. And we'll talk about the game in a little bit. They're at Auburn. But I think the key for Alabama is to run the ball and stop the run. I don't think this will be a big ball in the air, pass the ball crazy kind of ball game.
Interesting.
I like Missouri's chances in this game, but Bradford, even at 3.5, I got to take Alabama. I'm taking Alabama to come here and when the game is over, be 4 points better than Missouri. I'm kind of looking at it like that first game was an aberration as opposed to what Alabama actually is.
I don't disagree.
And they had to grow into it, though. If you know what I'm saying, that, they weren't the following week. They didn't blow anybody out. They haven't, just showed that they're this juggernaut again that would just really be in contention to win the national championship. Certainly they're in contention to get into the college football playoff. Uh-huh. But are you looking at them like, oh, yeah, they should be the odds-on favorite to win the national championship? I'm not there yet. Not at all. But I do think that the game against Georgia and the way when Georgia rose up and made it a game, Alabama was able to march right back down the field, score kind of a decisive touchdown, and be in control of that game throughout. Alabama played last week. Missouri didn't. Now, Missouri could practice all they wanted to and whatnot, but I think I'd rather come in with the hot hand than the 2 weeks off just for this game.
And I would ordinarily say that too, but considering some of the injuries
That's
Alvin,
a good
with
point.
which Mizzou
That's
was dealing,
an excellent point.
That's the thing. Not only in the secondary, we will get more to the corners and to the safeties here in a minute, but specifically up front. And right now, as we stand here, we're basically 48 hours away from kickoff. Caden Green at left tackle, he's listed on the initial availability report as questionable. Alvin, I don't think he's still going to suit up for this one after that injury sustained, obviously lower body injury against South Carolina, because if you're not in that range of even 80 to 90%, I don't know if you potentially compromise his standing for the remainder of the season, regardless of how important this contest is. And let's talk a bit, let's be fair to Bama insofar as after week one, going into even week two and thereafter, not having your number one running back for the entirety, essentially, of September in Jam Miller. Think about the difference he has made in just the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And when you think now about the offensive balance that has been achieved by Bama, Ty Simpson, obviously, he was still getting his feet wet, per se, in those first couple of contests as well. He has been absolutely dynamic and dynamite over the top. The numbers, you can put those in one category, the 13 touchdowns, the 1 interception. But now having the ability to rely not only on Ryan Williams, who admittedly has been a little shaky this year as far as ups and downs, a lot of drops as well. That's kind of afflicting a number of different premier wideouts across the country. But when you're talking about Bernard as well, when you're talking about Horton, when you're talking about that 3-pack last week that accounted for 246 yards, all of a sudden you have options galore. And that's why, if you're Missouri, you have to, in light of what you've seen over the first few weeks, in light of what you have back there on the back end, you knew, Alvin, this would be the number one point of concern for this team, especially defensively entering the year. And it's not as if in the South Carolina tilt, despite the fact that you emerged with that victory, you allowed 302 yards through the air to Lenora Sellers, who has been wildly inconsistent through the air. And that's why when Eli Drinkwitz, we're going to play this for you, actually spoke after the game about some of the maladies from that unit, I don't necessarily think that you received a lot in the way of issues the week thereafter versus UMass.
When we watch the tape tomorrow, I'm going to be on some secondary coaches' rear ends because this is getting ridiculous how porous our pass defense is. And that's got to get shored up in a hurry. And whatever we got to do to fix it, we're going to have to do. But there's way too many holes in our zone cover. We got bad eyes in the backfield. I'm not going to get negative. But, yeah, that crap's got to get corrected.
Well, whether you're speaking of zone, whether you're talking about man, Alabama has that many different ways to beat you. So if you want to talk about, okay, playing a little bit of man, not sliding as many guys over, then you have to deal with a Williams, with a Bernard, with a Horton one-on-one. Do you honestly feel comfortable with the exception? Okay, Norwood, his soft tissue injury is allegedly behind him. Do you feel confident, Alvin, in either of the two secondary DBs if you're Mizzou? Because Stephen Hall and Toriano Pride Jr. have created those questions since the jump.
Well, first thing, tell us how you really feel, Coach.
That was refreshing. I loved it.
That was refreshing.
I loved it.
You know what? That was before Simpson had his game against Georgia last week.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's almost like he said, like, you know what? If we don't shore it up any better than we just did, they're going to pass the ball against us. And that was before Simpson had his game against Georgia. Mm-hmm. So maybe my man's a little prophetic, too, where he said, like, now, never mind Alabama's running game. If we don't defend against the pass any better than this, they'll take advantage of that.
For sure.
So, I mean, for the first time, I think Missouri is actually facing a team that can run the ball and can pass the ball. And going back to that game, maybe, you know, okay, you could pass the ball and had some drops, all right? And then you, as it's gone on, I could see where Coach Drinkwitz is looking at that film and saying, like, this is going to be our downfall before, you know, slugging it out on the line of scrimmage is concerned. And if we fall behind, doesn't that take our running back out of play just a little bit?
Yeah.
Just a little bit, you know? And so I get exactly what he's saying. You know, over these 2 weeks, we got to get better against the pass. But over that 2 weeks, I think Allen became a better football team.
Yeah, I just think it's inevitable, too, in terms of, all right, so you want to try to play physical from the beginning, right? You want to try to jam a guy or two off of line, but inevitably, you know that you're going to require that safety help over the top. They're going to have to maneuver it to zone at some juncture, and that's where Burks Jr. and Cornell and Catalan, who finally showed up in a big-time way against, yes, admittedly, the Minutemen, it's going to have to rely more and be based on that communication, which has been lacking on that side of the football so far this year.
Yeah, because that wasn't the plays that UMass made wasn't like they had trouble, defending guys one-on-one. They had trouble playing the defense where guys were just standing there wide open, or the quarterback was able to hit guys in stride because there's nobody within 5 yards of them. Not saying that you and I could throw that pass, but at the same time, some of those you and I could have actually thrown the pass because guys just that open. You can't have that, especially against talents where if they catch the ball 10 yards down the field and there's nobody within a few yards of them,
good luck.
Good luck. They're going to make something special happen.
Which has to put more of the onus then, if you think about it, on the D-line, which has been able to foster more pressure over the course of the last couple of games, and you would hope for as much. So do you feel as if Zion Young and company going downhill, Josiah Trotter at the linebacker position as well, can this team get home with any regularity against that Alabama line?
I think you have to run a certain amount of blitzes. I think run blitz is part of them also, where you're trying hey, man, we got to stop these gaps just in case they run the ball. We get crazy, and they break the line of scrimmage, and he's going to run for 30, 40 yards. You can't have that either. So I don't think you have to have a unique scheme to take on Alabama, but I think that you have to be ready to play the pass and the run on every play. I know that's difficult. We both know this has also changed too. And I think Alabama looked at that Florida State film and said, okay, whatever we thought we were going to do, let's not try to do that. Let's do something that exploits the talents of our quarterback while we don't have, our first-string running back. And let's try to get him going in a way that, not that he could lead us by himself, but that he becomes a better football player. The same kid that played against Florida State, it couldn't be the same guy that played against Georgia. It's
that's fair.
Like Hulu series that's on now, Chad, whatever his name. He just looks like a different dude that played that first game. That guy who played quarterback against Florida State looked like he was a true freshman. That guy who played against Georgia looked like he was in control on the road against Georgia. How does that happen in a month? Unless you change some things schematically. So I think Alabama figured out exactly, okay, all right, everybody's on Coach DeBoer, but the guy is smart. And he was smart enough to say, I could yell and scream about blocking and tackling and making the correct place, and all those things need to be corrected. But also, what plays were we calling? What was our game plan? It wasn't right. Let's do this or let's do that. And I think they got back to whatever it was, or moved forward to whatever it is they're playing at now, which is a much higher plane. Oh, and by the way, Vanderbilt is pretty damn good. And I kind of I thought Alabama was going to just roll them, and it took 4 quarters for Alabama to take control of that game.
Yes, it did.
I came away from that saying, what, that was a pretty good test for Alabama, okay? Because I think Vanderbilt is pretty good, so we'll see if they bring that. But I'm just saying, I said last week, but that was 2 weeks ago. But Georgia, Vanderbilt, 2 for real games for Alabama in a row. And they're coming here, and I think they're feeling good about themselves.
And just to clarify, you were referring to a Hulu series that actually has not been scrapped. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Hey, in reference to those quarterbacks, though, the signal callers in pressure specifically, it's been 12 minutes actually here, but we have yet to get to MU's guy at the controls. That would be Bo Perbula.
Yes.
And for as much praise as he understandably should receive for his body of work in his first full season as a starter at the D1 level, he is basically lapping one Drew Aller.
I was going to say
State.
that. I didn't. Right.
I won't take too many shots therein, but by the same token, if you look at some of the decision making, unlike a Ty Simpson, in isolation, in a vacuum, yes, over the last couple of games, he does have 3 picks in each of the last 3 games. In total, first half variety. And speaking of the pressure as well, I felt, Alvin, as if after that game versus South Carolina, the continuity of the line, it had been jeopardized. And yet, at left tackle, Javen Richardson, he stepped in and he did a bang-up job. There was entirely too much A and B gap pressure yielded by MU against UMass. Now, after the fact, Eli Drinkwitz, he wanted to talk about how, yes, the decision-making process had to be altered and adjusted somewhat by Pribula. But when you are forced out of the pocket on as many occasions as you were against UMass in your own digs, I don't know how well that bodes heading into this matchup, which is why let's take it full circle here. The key to this game for Missouri, and I don't care if Caden Green is out there, I don't care if it's Richardson again, I don't care if basically you're even rotating guys in once more at right guard, whatever you need. The motor is Ahmad Hardy. He is the Clydesdale, to use one of the terms there utilized by Eli Drinkwitz. He's on pace for 1,900 yards this season. All of a sudden, he's in the top 15 in Heisman odds. He leads the entire country in rushing right now. I'm not saying that Missouri is going to be able to maintain its stranglehold, #1 in the country as far as time of possession goes. You're not going to keep it against Alabama for more than 37 minutes. However, you must keep it out of the hands of Keenan and company for as long as possible, because if there's one thing we know, going back to turnovers, that issue as well, Alabama, regardless of where it has played so far in 25, has been exceedingly good at turning over the opposition. That +8 margin, Alvin, it is #2 in the country. But at the end of the afternoon, with so much at stake, with so much on the line, and primarily because this has shifted from -2.5 to -3.5 in favor right now at present for Alabama, Missouri, I do firmly believe, will have used this bye week opportunity to not only study all the requisite tape, going over all of the games and so forth. It's as healthy as it can be at this juncture. Ahmad Hardy is primed for this moment. You ride him to, I'm not saying an outright victory. I won't be that bold here on the College Football Connection. But Missouri is going to be in this game well into the fourth quarter. And I'm very, very much intrigued by the 51.5. The defensive talent on display, though, sure, there could be a turnover or two down the stretch. I'm playing the under somewhat begrudgingly. But you know, hey, come on. I can't lie to the people here. I can't lie to the people. Tigers plus 3.5, but I have my reasons.
Okay.
I have my reasons.
All right. Like I said, I'm gonna give the 3.5. I'm gonna ride the Alabama is Alabama, and I don't. This is not in a negative way. Alabama is Alabama. Missouri is Missouri. That's why I'm just gonna. And I know Missouri's at home, so I'm picking a little. That's a little high on that 3.5, but I am going to go with Alabama on that. Bradford, I have no idea what score is going to be. I lean toward the under, but I've leaned toward the under in some games where I said, I think this is going to be in the under, and it's like 28-26 in some of these games, not Missouri's, but different games already this year.
So you're not feeling it here.
And I'm just I'm not saying that it might be 24-24 going into the fourth quarter. We're at 48 points. All of a sudden, we know that a field goal might win it. Now we're at 51. Mm-hmm. Never mind overtime, as I mentioned last week. So, man, you can't plan in that extra 12 points that occurred in overtime. You can't put a finger on that. Let me ask you this. Are you stacking box more and taking Hardy out and saying, Bo Privilege, you beat us. We're going to play a lot of man, but we're going to stack that box. We're not going to let your guy get going.
Oh, without question.
That's what I would do.
Without question.
Okay, now that's what I would do if I was Alabama's defensive coordinator.
Because even according to the head coach himself, and just review the tape over the last couple of weeks, I'm not saying that Pribula by any means, by any circumstances whatsoever, has played poorly, but a sketchy decision here and there, that could be the ultimate difference, the lone difference against a team the likes of which you're coming in with in terms of Alabama. Seriously, and for as much as we want to say about how these guys up front, they have been road graders, they have been maulers in the running game, absolutely no line has been better in that regard. And yes, a lot has to do with the singular talents of Hardy. But you're 97th in the nation, Alvin, when it comes to sack rate. That means something. And if you get into a situation again in which Pribula has a little bit in the way of those happy feet in the pocket, I'm talking about pushing up too much in the pocket. He's been slightly guilty of that, even as per the head coach over the last few weeks. You're trying to keep your guy accountable. I get all of that. But what is your foremost strength if you're Missouri? There are going to be chances and opportunities for Kevin Coleman one-on-one. You take a shot or two downfield with Marquise Johnson. But I am putting that ball squarely in the stomach of Ahmad Hardy 25, 30 times. I don't even care, because this is, with all due respect to Jamal Roberts, This is an Ahmad Hardy game.
Well,
this is why he came here. He is the elite of the elite. It has to be him leading the charge.
Right, and if you have that many yards and you've put yourself on the radar as far as Heisman is concerned and all that, one, it's not a fluke, and two, your team has to lean on that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you could look and say, like, oh, boy, we're gonna fool Alabama, and Hardy's going to have 10, 12 carries, and we're going to do this, that, or the other thing. No, you just have to slug it out and let him do what he's going to do.
You've had 2 weeks. Get to Auburn when you get to Auburn.
We get to Auburn when
That's
you get
it.
to Auburn, exactly. Then I think you also be aware that Alabama will probably, when it is, if let's say they do stack box, and you find yourself in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, something like that, okay? I think initially Alabama will then rush 4 and see if they can get there with 4 guys so they can keep guys, more defensive guys in the backfield. That would be my game plan against Missouri, and it's bread and butter, and it's simple. Same way that Missouri should attack them, bread and butter and simple. Nobody stop Hardy. You stop him. I don't care how many people you put in the box. He's going to get his yards. He's going to make it out. Now, he can't be getting hit in the backfield. You got to create some kind of initial hole.
Yeah.
Like, come on now. Like, you're going to have a bad day if they're in the backfield getting hands and arms on you.
But for the first time in forever, you can legitimately say we feel confident even going into battle up against an Alabama going hat on hat.
Yes.
When was the last time you could say that from Missouri?
Oh, absolutely.
When?
Right. Oh, maybe 4 years ago?
Maybe.
Right.
Not against Bama.
Yeah, not against Bama. Against most teams.
These
right.
Titans.
Yeah, because, we're talking about 4 years ago. They had the best team in the country by far. So, yeah, case in point here also, this is still not I can't even say our daddies anymore because we're getting up there in age. But this is not that team. This is not a Nick Saban team from 8 years ago. They're Alabama, but they're not. And that's not DeBoer's fault.
Yeah.
Times change. Kids go all over the place and whatnot. So they aren't coming in here as that Alabama team. So it'll play out.
They're vulnerable.
No, they could be beaten. Could Missouri beat Alabama in a game on Saturday at home? Absolutely, positively. Would I be shocked? No, not at all. But I think Alabama can do just enough that they'll get out of there. 27-23, something like that.
This is a time I'm not even going to mention the ungodly time at which I'm going to be arriving on Saturday morning. We have to get set in Missouri for that one.
Oh, man, I did with the homecoming 2 years ago. That was 11 a.m. game, and I had to be there like it's early, man.
Yeah, it is.
I know what you're saying.
There is simply too much to take in during that 11 a.m. window.
Yeah.
Alvin, from Mizzou and Alabama to another huge one in Champaign. Let's go to Big Ten country. Let's talk about the Ohio State University, number 1 in the nation with just, I guess I can say, 41st place votes, because that tells you a lot about the state right now, the lack of a unanimous number 1 in the country. But for all intents and purposes, the Buckeyes have been as dominant as any other outfit, and specifically on the defensive side of the football. Kind of funny to think about how many individuals were, I guess, in Columbus, not necessarily, but across the country, wondering, maybe clutching a few pearls and saying, oh my goodness, Jim Knowles, he's heading to Penn State. What are we going to do? Matt Patricia's the guy. Yeah, Matt Patricia has been that guy because his unit is allowing a grand total of 5 points per game. Alvin, the season high that you've permitted so far, it came against Ohio when you allowed 9 a few weeks ago. Here's what we have, though. We have the Buckeyes right now listed as lofty favorites on the road, minus 14.5, in spite of what you saw from Illinois not only last week piling up the points versus Purdue after a pedestrian start. We should note, I was here actually in the 101 ESPN studios to watch that one. He had a little bit of trouble early on with the mobility of that quarterback in Ryan Brown, and that begs the question, will you also have some difficulty with somebody who is really coming on at the position of QB for Ohio State too? Julian Sayin, when you're talking about true freshmen then migrating into the ranks of some of the premier sophomores as well, it has been a trial by fire setting for him, and he has really, I don't want to say lived up to the billing, because I don't know if he necessarily, Alvin, had the hype associated with him that a lot of other quarterbacks did entering this season, but for a running game that basically hasn't been able to really gain a lot in the way of traction, and even Jeremiah Smith hasn't had quite that interstellar start to 2025, Sayin is doing the thing, not only running this offense, but slowly but surely unleashing it a little more, as you saw last week in that contest. Carnell Tate, don't forget about him, 183 yards through the air. right now this OSU offense, I wouldn't say that it is humming, but it is definitely improving going into Champaign. Over under 49.5. Your initial take on this one?
My initial take is, all right, the big game, week 0, Ohio State, Texas.
Yeesh.
Ohio State shut down Texas. What has Texas done to now say, like, man, that was a great defensive effort by Ohio State?
Gone winless in conference play.
Right. Ran it up on the San Jose States of the world. Couldn't get nothing done against Florida till it was like late in the game. Ohio State goes to Wisconsin. It's a game for a while. They blow them out. Right now on a neutral field, I'm taking Miami. On a neutral field, I'm taking Oregon. I like Illinois 14.5. You're gonna give me more than 2 touchdowns.
That's what I was thinking.
Illinois
too.
is playing at home.
At home.
And Ohio State hasn't. I'm sorry. If they'd have put a 63-10 on somebody or something like that, maybe, just maybe, I'd say, like, okay, they are. But I think they're number one because they beat Texas. I really do. I think they beat Texas that first week. They end up number one, but they're only number one because they haven't lost. But I really, really like Illinois to cover. That's all I'm going to say. It's like 14.5. I mean, Illinois plays, let's say they play the same as they did against USC offensively. Then they're in that game throughout.
At least for the first 3 quarters.
At least for 3 quarters.
They were great.
Yeah, that's, I'm saying, like, so that means they'll be right there.
And for the last 3 quarters versus Purdue, we're still waiting on the 4 quarters.
We're still
That's been the problem.
It's 4 quarters of football.
Yeah.
Exactly. In Indiana, was that an aberration? What was that exactly? I don't think any of us really know, but I know this. 14.5 is too many. I think we're also going to go over on the 49.5 on this one.
Okay, yeah.
I think that Illinois will be in the game throughout because I think Illinois will be able to score some points. Ohio State has been dominant on defense, but again, they've been dominant on defense against some teams that could be defended. And I'm not saying that Illinois is offensive juggernaut, going to put 2-3 guys in the pros or anything like that. Quarterback is rounding into shape after kind of a shaky, beginning of the season. I just like Illinois at home, and you're giving them 14.5. I'll take every one of those 14.5 points.
If Illinois is to stay in this one for the entirety of the festivities, I'll revert to the text I sent you last weekend. Luke, Altmaier,
yes, right.
Because he was, have you seen a guy at that position in this college football season be more immaculate than he was in that contest versus the Boilermakers? Look, I get it. That secondary, it was overwhelmed with which to begin. But as far as actually going through his progressions, now as a senior, and this decision, what a huge, we could look back at the end of this year, the end of this campaign, Alvin, and say, what a monumental decision. No joke for him to have come back to school, because you don't know what the rest of the schedule holds for this team. But if you were to have anybody else, frankly, at the controls of this offense, it would look strikingly different, because the rub here, or the fly in the ointment, I think, for Illinois, and I don't question whatsoever the ability of Altmaier to keep this team in the game, but do you get anything from the ground attack, okay? It's not as if Fagan had a bang-up game against Purdue. Valentine, this tandem, it has the ability to maybe give you that thunder and lightning, but are you really going to be able to pound it into the teeth, the interior of that Ohio State defensive line? I wonder about that. And so everything then, it becomes a trickle-down effect, okay? You're going to have to resort to quite a few screens, basically outs, getting it out quickly to Hank Beatty and company. And you have seen a couple of other complementary threats in the receiving game come on in recent weeks. But is this line, and I think there is still a question about whether your starting center is going to be available too. You did just fine last week against Purdue. Okay, in West Lafayette. Can you hold off that absolutely ferocious rush for enough drives to be able to sustain some stuff together? I do think that Illinois stays in this one until relatively early in the 4th quarter, and maybe a backdoor sort of cover does occur, a late touchdown. I'll go with Illinois plus 14.5, but I'm with you too. The potential for points there late in the 4th, if things get a little out of control, a little crazy, 49.5. If we were even in the low 50s, maybe I would second guess it, but I'm going over as well. I am fascinated to see, though, okay, in this game, if it is relatively close, if it's nip and tuck, does Brian Hartline as the offensive coordinator, slowly but surely, he's taking those training wheels, the kid gloves, off of Julian Saint? Are we going to see more and more downfield? Because that's what Jeremiah Smith wants.
Right. And I think you have to go there if Illinois can score points. If Illinois could, and I don't mean to get up like it's 17-14, halftime, Ohio State lead. Now, I think in their mind, they're thinking like, well, man, Illinois will probably put up another couple of touchdowns. We're going to have to score.
Yes.
We're not going to be able to just run out the second half. So I think that'll build up the points in the second half. Nobody's, I always leave myself also in my mind of saying, like, Ohio State might score 40 points. So,
Ohio State has so far this year in all but one game,
right.
if I'm not mistaken.
So that's another reason I'm kind of confident on the over in that if Illinois doesn't do anything, that means Ohio State is doing a lot. I think if Illinois registered, like we had 200 yards of total offense in this entire game, I don't think that means that the score ended up 21-10 Ohio State. I think that means Ohio State is scoring because Illinois is punting. And so I'm confident on that over on that one. And I'm confident on Illinois can cover 14.5, especially at home.
Not quite certain if they'll get into the mid-50s, but the odds makers, the prognosticators, Alvin, as we roll along here on the CFC on 101 ESPN, that YouTube channel, and 101ESPN.com, maybe they're projecting as many or as much when it comes to the festivities there in Eugene. Indiana and Oregon, boy, the other heavy hitter when it comes to the Big Ten this coming weekend. Oregon favored by minus 7.5, undefeated versus undefeated. Oregon returning home after that bye week and definitely regaining some of that energy after what was a riveting double overtime triumph over Penn State. We know what happened to the Nittany Lions, but I am left here, Alvin, with really the impression that how much buzz has been placed upon, has centered on one Dante Moore, right? The quarterback for Oregon, taking the helm from Dylan Gabriel and just having an absolute bang-up start to the season. But at times, I don't think we give enough credit, one, to the defense for Dan Lanning, but two, the rushing attack as well, because there is a ton of balance right now. They may not be household names, and you may even have a transfer or two actually haven't worked out. But when three different individuals have rushed for over 180 yards on the campaign apiece, and then you've got another one in Davison with 7 tutties, the balance is there, and really that bodes extremely well for this team as it withstands the rigors of Big Ten play going down the stretch. And whether you want to do a bit more in the way of keep away or air it out against Indiana, I think this is a team that is capable of being able to undertake both of those measures. And even though Indiana absolutely annihilated Illinois just a couple of weeks ago, there are some flaws that we can point at. And we can actually even look back to the last game against Iowa, right? Because for once, Mendoza actually looked human at quarterback. He was 13 of 23 after being outstanding through the first month plus
and Iowa
of
will
the
do
season.
That to you.
True. But if you were Kirk Ferentz, did you provide a bit more in the way of a blueprint in terms of basically sending the house on a number of occasions and forcing him under duress to have to get through those reads that much more quickly? If I am Oregon, I am in attack mode from the beginning because I also know I'm selling out to stop the pass to basically snuff out Mendoza, because right now I don't trust the Indiana running game as much when you averaged under 3 yards per carry without BB Jr. against Iowa.
Well, see, I think Indiana's running into a team that it would have been one thing if you'd have played them the week after that dramatic victory at Penn State, but They got a week off. So they were able to, Dan Hanning looked like he was about to have a heart attack in that press conference after the game was over. They had won. He's like hyperventilating and talking they were just still on this emotional high. They've now been able to settle down, watch Indiana, in their game last week, do all the film, and be prepared. And I think Oregon is going to, I think they're going to take Indiana and the 7-5. Real quick, I think in this NIL day and guys are being paid, in college football, all of a sudden I think we're kind of acting like they are professional football players and they are not.
Guilty.
And that's what happened to Penn State last week when they went to UCLA. Penn State had to go across the country, play UCLA, coming off of a really hard loss to Oregon in double overtime.
Oh, you're not caping for James here.
No,
you're not caping
not.
for him,
no,
are you?
But this is all teams. But I said that was just a prime example of they lost that game because they just were still playing Oregon. and they had to go across the country. And I don't know how they set it up. You know, everybody's broke, even though nobody's broke. So they probably didn't go on Wednesday. You know, they probably didn't fly out there till Thursday, if not Friday, and all that. And I'm just like, nope, you're asking a lot.
You thought you could wake up in time for the second half.
Yeah.
At intermission, you were already trailing 27-7.
Yes.
It was over. I don't care about the play calling in the
I don't
last
either.
couple of minutes.
Right.
That's something else.
Right, exactly. You got pummeled the first 8 rounds in the fight, and then the guy that, you know, pummeled you just hung on the last 4 rounds and won the decision. That was your fault for the first 8 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana's got to go to Oregon. And granted, people say, oh, come on, they fly first class, and they do this and they do that. Okay, yeah, it's all that in a bag of chips. I just drove back from the Pacific Northwest. It's out there, let me tell you, right? And so I'm just telling you, that also plays a factor in these things.
To say nothing of the atmosphere once you get there.
Right.
You're at Oregon.
You're at Oregon. And Oregon wants to be number 1 in the nation. You know, they ain't kidding around. Like, them in Miami are saying, like, Ohio State, who? Right. We'll get our chance. But they want to take care of Indiana because they want to stay right there at the top of the poll. I like Oregon in this game. I think Indiana showed me something maybe I didn't think they had in that Illinois game, but that was at home. I think they caught Illinois at the right moment, and I think they're catching Oregon at the wrong moment. I think Oregon is going to be primed and ready to go. Oregon is faster because they're faster than most Big Ten teams. And I think Oregon has that blueprint to say, like, look, we're going to get after you, dude. And if you make plays on our pine cone-covered, crazy-looking field, more power to you. But I think they're going to get after them. I think they're going to get after Indiana. I think Oregon is going to make their testament, never mind Penn State game, but now this will be the emphatic stamp on we're the best team in the Big Ten. We want to be number 1 in the nation. I think Indiana catches them at the wrong time and a whole lot of points, man.
That is an excellent point about the sheer speed because I think we've kind of lost sight of that in the last year plus, carrying it over from Pac-12 country, and Oregon just plays differently than your classic Big Ten teams. Even if you're seeing that evolution, Oregon is just built quite differently. And now, with that chance, some would say you already could have staked a claim to number 1 in the nation, if not for Ohio State's Week 1 victory versus Texas.
That's what I'm saying.
But you can affirm everything here. You can reinforce the notion that you are the best. You prove it here in a decisive manner. And retroactively, quite honestly, I'm still not sure how Lanning's bunch actually surrendered, double OT or not, 27 points to the Nittany Lions, but this defense is about as stout as it gets as well. So from a three-dimensional perspective or performance angle, if you will, Oregon has all of the ability to run away with this one. I will take Ducks definitely minus 7.5. You could say 17.5, Alvin. I would not shy away from that. But the over-under, what was it, 55.5?
55.5.
55.5. I'm having some trouble with that one.
Okay.
I really am. I'm having some trouble. I'm going to yield to you on that one because I'm not feeling it so much. I'm not. A little more shaky in that regard.
Okay. I just think that Oregon will score. All right. And I don't think they'll shut Indiana out. I don't think it'll be, anything like that. So I think by the time we're all said and done, we go over that 55-5. I really do. I know that we've had some this year that, God, they didn't come within 14 points of the over.
Right.
And I've been good on my unders. The ones that I've been shocked at were, on my overs. But I'm kind of like, oh, man, there just weren't a lot of points in that game. Mm-hmm. Case in point, Florida last week. They came in on the under, called it right. I figured, I was right on Florida. I was right, and I hit the under. But in the back of my mind, I said, man, that under was really under, So I like Oregon. I don't think they're going to boat race Indiana, but I think they're going to handle Indiana.
Now, from a contest potentially with a lot of offensive juice to another one, maybe not with quite as much punch. Okay, let's get to the opponent that was vanquished by Florida just last Saturday. That would be Texas. And Alvin, yeah, all you have to do right now to try to rebound in the Big 12, or the SEC rather. Hey, these two teams met countless times in the Big 12, right? It's still ingrained in my mind.
It's a Big 12 game.
Because that would be Oklahoma. Oklahoma, Texas, we're calling it that Red River rivalry. Red River rivalry, slow it down to be able to get it out there because right now Oklahoma remaining undefeated, and here is another possible angle for you. John Mateer, Believe you me, he is pushing to play. He's pushing to play 17 days out from surgery to repair that broken bone in his throwing hand, the right hand. Look, he's initially listed as questionable. You can try to push him to get back all you want, but I don't even know, fundamentally, Alvin, if quite frankly you need the services of Mateer. Mike Hawkins Jr. looked pretty darn good a week ago. He's been pretty good in spot duty for this program. Heck, last season down the stretch, he looked a heck of a lot better than Jackson Arnold at the position. It's OU versus Texas, old school style, at the charmingly outdated, or so I read a couple of days ago, Cotton Bowl. The over-under has moved to 43.5. And here's your plot twist. After the entire week, an entire week of Texas inexplicably somehow being favored minus 1.5. Betting money, it has shifted things just a tad. Oklahoma now is your 1.5 favorite, and that makes things a little more interesting, but I find myself hard-pressed to evaluate not only the performance against the Gators, especially in that first half offensively, but throughout this entire year. The offensive line pressure rate, the inability to protect Manning, the inability to run the football, for crying out loud, Alvin. And we can throw a lot of shade, as well we should, at Arch Manning for his performance at quarterback for Texas as a starter in year one. But he's not getting any help from the arsenal in the backfield either. He is this team's leading rusher, Kansas City Chiefs style, with 160 yards, okay? Where has Baxter been? Wisner, I understand, sustaining an injury there, but where is this push from an O-line that admittedly entering the season only had one returning starter? But it's Texas. Where did all of the money, I'll just say it, go? Where did it go? Because also in the receiving game, you have Wingo, you have Livingstone, you have a couple of options, but where's the depth of which to speak? We have spent so much time, again, putting that onus almost solely on Arch Manning as the individual primarily, mostly responsible, foremost, for all of these struggles. For the 3-2 start, you have Sark now talking about culture. Oh, it's okay in Austin. But where's the supporting cast? Even the defense last week didn't show up. Didn't show up, period.
Didn't show up. Florida, which is, how can we say, limited on offense, pretty much had their way the first three quarters of that game. Arch Manning was under duress. And Florida had like a third-team guy out there playing like D-tackle or something like that. They were coming hard on the edge, but like they had some injuries on their interior defensive line, and they were just sometimes they were just, as soon as he got the ball, he had to take off like either left or right because if I stand right here, I'm going to get sacked.
Yeah.
That's hard to play. So you could say what you want to about Arch Manning, but man, he was under duress. I think Florida was a little bit winded themselves by that fourth quarter. And Texas, but the whole thing where like all of a sudden it's let's not give up a touchdown on one play. And next thing you know, you've given up a touchdown on 4 plays. Why don't we just keep playing the same defense we were? That's a debate that goes on all the time.
Not Dallas Wilson, though. He was good.
No, he was
to watching him.
He was good, right. So I think Texas coming into this game, and I think it flipped. Now, I don't know what goes on and who knows what, but that tells me that Mateer is a little closer to playing than we think. And not only that if he does play, he's going to be pretty good to go. That's what that flip in those points, that 3-point change kind of told me. I don't really get it. I liked Texas when they were giving 1.5. So I definitely still like Texas now that they're receiving 1.5. I think Texas just is going to be a tad bit better than Oklahoma without Mateer. And then if Mateer comes back, I still think that Texas is a little bit better because Mateer hasn't played, and I don't think he would be 100%.
And it's a cliche, but when you're talking about this rivalry, this annual matchup, you really do have to throw out the record. Because what have we witnessed in the last decade plus?
I was just going to tell you that because, like I say, former Big 12 teams and just witnessing it, in the last decade, at least 2 or 3 times, the lesser team has not only beaten the favorite team, they have whooped the favorite team.
Charlie Strong won a game. Charlie Strong. Remember him?
Oh, I remember Charlie Strong lost to KU, and I said, they're probably going to fire him on the plane, and they did let him get back to Austin.
How hospitable.
How hospitable, right. Yeah, so I remember Charlie Strong. I felt bad for him because...
Speaking of Mateer, though, if he does indeed play, to what degree is he still going to be hamstrung? at least a bit. I mean, when you're talking about trying to accelerate that recovery, that timetable, I give him all the credit in the world. But can he be John Mateer? Because as much as anybody else in the country, Alvin, we've talked about it here on the College Football Connection. First few weeks of the season, Oklahoma is undefeated. Primarily, why? Because he has done everything.
He did everything.
He has been the leading rusher. So, for a team that still really couldn't get it going on the ground versus the Kent State Flashes, yeah, you barely averaged 4 yards on the ground per carry against Kent State. We finally saw, oh, hey, here's an appearance from Jaden Ott, this celebrated transfer from Cal. Are you going to be able to talk about two wildly inconsistent rushing attacks here? At some point, the ball is going to go in the air, and that's why when I'm seeing a la last week, Texas, Florida, I wasn't certain about the winner of that eventual outcome. But when I see a number that low, Alvin, 42.5, 43.5, I have to go over by just a tad. And I'm feeling Texas as well because this has to be, pardon the pun, it has to be your last stand for real aspirations relating to this year.
Exactly. Wherever Oklahoma's going to go, I'm sure they had high aspirations, but I don't think Oklahoma saw itself. Actually, let me rephrase that. I didn't see Oklahoma in the SEC championship game. Now, it's looking like Texas is not going to make it either, but Texas's season, based on games they have later on in the year, is down the tubes if they lose to Oklahoma. I mean, now, whatever your aspirations were, now you got to play out the string to make sure you don't have 3 conference losses. And so I'm not saying there's more on the line for Texas in the game, but I am saying that, man, this is kind of, as far as national championship Texas, this is your last stand. And I think they make good. I think Arch Manning is not like all of a sudden Heisman Trophy candidate again after this game, but I think he does make a good showing because I think they're at least now starting to hopefully understand Steve Sarkisian. Like, look, if they're not going to block for him, we got to get the ball out of his hand. And we got to tell him, hey, look, you're holding the ball too long. We got to get the ball at your hand. We're going to run a bunch of swing passes, tight end. We're going to do things to make up for this porous offensive line. Because let's give up on 7-9 yard drops and you waiting for these long plays to develop. Because he was the third quarter, they were still, he's 14 yards back.
I don't get
off the line of scrimmage.
Just don't get
it. He said, like, man, all you're doing is getting your guy sacked. So I think that they hopefully would have figured that out during this week and come out with a little bit more fast-paced. I think Texas should line up on the ball throughout the game instead of when they're losing in the fourth quarter. They found some success. Now, remember I said this too, that first game, that maybe Coach Sarkisian knows that Arch Manning, not that he's bad, but maybe he knows that, hey, y'all, he really ain't all that.
It's hard to dispute.
Right. I don't want him to throw the ball 30 times. Because if he throws the ball 30 times, 3 times, he's going to throw it to the other team. I can't have that. And maybe they're sitting on that. Maybe they know that. So we'll see against Oklahoma. Oklahoma will be fired up because this could, man, like if Oklahoma beats, let's say Oklahoma beats Texas and Mateer doesn't play. I mean, where's Oklahoma going when Mateer comes back?
Yeah, and how high do you ascend in the next poll, too?
Right.
Because it's still Texas, and you're remaining. Then you go to 6-0, yeah, with your best players sidelined, and you buy another week.
And while we're here, is Texas the best football team ever that is not in the top 25? Probably so.
Talent-wise. We think.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's a good point. That other teams have completely fallen out of the top 25, and you look at them and you say, like, how could that possibly be? Penn State also. Penn State lost because they got dropped because they got whooped so bad for UCLA. I told you there's other factors involved in that.
Definitely.
I get that. But all Texas has done is lose some competitive football games. So how you going to say, like, you're no longer worthy of the top 25, and you go look at 25 and 24, and you say, like, oh, I think Texas could beat those teams in a football game.
Well, Notre Dame is certainly showing you something, too, along those lines,
well, a little bit, right.
Similarly, as far as early
as long as Texas A&M keeps winning. Like, where would Notre Dame have been if Texas A&M got smoked, like, in any other game as after they played Notre Dame?
Very true.
Right. So they got high aspirations too. That's another game. See, that's another game that Texas has to play. So you lose Oklahoma, man. You got to play Texas A&M. I think the game is in College Station. Like, man, you get blitzed in that one. You're playing. Hey, it'll be a good ball game. Don't get me wrong, but they had national championship aspirations.
Cross that bridge when you get to it, right? From somebody,
one game at a time.
From
right.
somebody who has thrown in Arch Manning the 5 interceptions through his first 5 games to somebody who hasn't hurled one into the hands of the opposition. But is that for, or can it be attributed to, a lack of risk-taking in general? Hey, you can certainly characterize as much when it comes to Jackson Arnold and Auburn right now, because Alvin, after a 3-0 start, after knocking off a Baylor team early in the season and taking care of its obligatory business, we always knew this would be the gauntlet of the schedule for the Auburn Tigers. And right here, yes, in the Plains at home, you're going to be encountering, just ho-hum, Georgia this coming Saturday. It is our lone nighttime affair that we're previewing here on the College Football Connection. Bradford and Alvin with you, winding it down. The Bulldogs favored by 3.5 only on the road. And that, too, Alvin, it's a testament to just how tight this series is, even though Auburn has lost, if I'm not mistaken, 5 straight in the series. Even this year for Auburn, the last 2 games you have dropped have each been by a possession, and yet you're still waiting for this offense to really take flight, to unleash, to be able to maximize its full potential. But the more I watch Jackson Arnold, the more I watch how the premier receiving threats in Singleton, Coleman, are basically being neglected. You have to wonder, too, at what point will that frustration begin to set in and take effect? Because you've got talent galore. Hugh Freeze has talent galore. And you brought in this individual from the portal. You thought that you could basically rehabilitate the career arc of Jackson Arnold. He hasn't made mistakes, but he also hasn't pushed it down the field. How does that play out against Georgia?
Well, when the Oklahoma game, so he goes back. Now I'm playing at Oklahoma, and Material played him. It was a good football game.
It was.
That Oklahoma won. Auburn, no problem with that. But then you lose again. Now, you find yourself playing a Georgia team that, quite frankly, is very disappointed in the loss that they just had to Alabama. I like Georgia to cover the 3.5 in this one because Georgia got beat in that game, but Alabama just scored when they had to score near the end and got a stop when they had to get a stop near the end. And give Alabama all the credit in the world, but it wasn't like Georgia sucked that game. Georgia just got beat.
Yeah.
And I think Georgia will go down and just beat Auburn. I feel for you, Freeze, because he's right there, and then it all falls apart every year. And he's always on a perpetual hot seat. And now he's got Georgia at home. And everybody's thinking that Auburn is supposed to beat Georgia because Georgia just lost. And Georgia doesn't look like the old Georgia. And on and on and on. And I just think Georgia is going to go down there and score more points than they do. Very simple in that if you look at how Georgia played last week or in the Alabama game, pass game was kind of missing, but Georgia ran the ball. Georgia's offensive line protected the quarterback. Alabama just made more plays. And so I think that's why Georgia will just make more plays against Auburn.
Last week, though, I'll be frank. I'll be up front. I was not wowed by the bounce back against Kentucky. Yeah, you were really good on third down. You were 9 of 12. You were able to put 35 points, if memory serves, on the board. Mm-hmm. But what did you really do once again when it came to the vertical passing game? Now, Gunnar Stockton, arguably, with the exception of a game here and there, has been much more effective with his feet actually making those off-platform decisions and rushes than consistently going down the field. Shades of Jackson Arnold, frankly. And when I think about the Auburn run defense and its ability to be really stout here, and I also consider this is a huge issue, in my estimation, going on the road in that environment. Now that, Alvin, as you know, that is an SEC nighttime environment.
Yes.
How will this uber raw and uber green offensive line at present hold up? Because maybe you get a guy or two back. But the fact of the matter is that right now, you have one individual who started the season actually manning a position on that offensive line for Kirby Smart. Okay, last week, down the stretch, versus the Wildcats, versus that Stoops coach squad. You got through it. You got through it with aplomb. But you had 2 true freshmen on the right side of the line. I think that's going to mean something when the fans get exceedingly rabid in the second half of that game Saturday night. I'm not proclaiming that Georgia is going to lose this football game. But at 3.5, not 3, Auburn can stay within a field goal. I'm telling you right now, those Tigers can stay within a field goal. No, is it some sort of a victory, a moral victory? It is not, because Hugh Freeze can't afford those. No, he needs flat-out victories.
And he needs victories over the top-flight teams in the SEC.
But it's not going to happen. Yet, Auburn will. Yes, give me Auburn plus 3.5 here. Over-under 46.5. That's much more tricky for me. That's tricky. What are you thinking there?
I'm thinking under.
Okay.
I'm thinking under. I really am. Yeah. And I said, 46.5, I'm just thinking under. I think this is going to be like a close game that Georgia wins by 4 to 6 points and with not a lot of points scored in the game.
Mm-hmm. I'll lean under as well. I will lean under there. Unofficial projection for your boys this weekend. Speaking of points, how in the world do you go about stopping Texas Tech? Now, that is a challenge of the utmost variety. Jayhawks and Red Raiders, I'm loving it, but I'm a little worried for you, pal, even though that was a nice comeback last weekend.
Yes, that was the game where it said, not again, and they get a stop, and it's raining, and it's night, and it's, UCF, which is a good football team, and like I say, oh, man, they're going to blow it again, but they hold, they win the game. All right. I think that if KU's offense continues to like I say, get a little bit better every week, you scored enough points to beat Cincinnati. You just couldn't stop them.
Sure.
Now, Texas Tech is going to score points. But I think this is one where, hey, if we look up and we're down 38-30 at the beginning of the fourth quarter, I think this is a game that KU could win 48-45.
Let it fly.
Nonsense. Let it fly. You hit the nail on the head. They're you know what? I ain't gonna worry about the defense. Y'all just slow them down if you can't stop them. But offense, this is your time to just put up big numbers. And Texas Tech is undefeated, and they're at home, and this is supposed to happen, and this is supposed to happen. Okay, all right. This is the kind of game that a team like Texas Tech and I'm not, in general, I'm not really putting a finger on Texas Tech, but this is the kind of game that a team loses when they're undefeated halfway through the season.
It's a gotcha game.
It's a gotcha game because you just ran into somebody who was just scoring points. And maybe you turn it over one too many times, or maybe, like I said, all of a sudden we said, man, we lost the game 48-44. We scored 44 points and lost. It'll be something like that if KU could pull it off.
Kind of like what we saw last week in the very same conference, Iowa State. What was that?
What was that?
My goodness.
Yes, exactly.
31-7 Bearcats, and then you have to storm back to make it something?
Right. And Cincinnati was just pounding them. And like I say, Cincinnati Stadium, 37,000, once they get rocking on you, it's like, oh, God, I feel like I'm playing in somebody's living room or something like that. And so then Iowa State finally got it back in there and climbed it back to within respectability.
Too late.
But it was too late. Now, and I'm going to say, Cincinnati, once again, might be a little bit better than we gave them credit for. Because they, like I said, they took it to Iowa State. And, man, like I said, golly, you hate to look back and say, man, we could have just hung on and won that Cincinnati game. Man, K-State is kind of whatever. Baylor lost again. Cincinnati is what it is, but you have a win over them. We got UCF on the road. It's weird. Big 12 is just there.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It really is.
Any given Saturday.
Oh, and this was another columnist wrote this, but they're the TBS game. TBS is running some Big 12 and whatnot.
Sure.
And somebody was pointing out, he said, hey, if you've watched the Big 12 games so far, and you're just watching football, you're a college football fan, you're looking and saying, man, every game that has been on has been wildly entertaining. They last possession and the last 2 weeks, man, all these games are really, really entertaining. And then you turn on, Oregon and Pitt State with great game and whatnot, you say, but you watch the Big Ten and the SEC, man, somebody's out there getting beat.
Right.
I mean, you looked at Florida and Texas last week. You would say that was entertaining, but you would also say, like, man, what the hell is wrong with Texas? And Florida ain't no good, and they ready to fire the coach, and they got fired up, and then damn near lost the game. Like I said, only Florida could lose this game. By the way, just real quick, the last 10 minutes of that game, you would have told me, like, if you would have told me, like, hey, man, Florida's trying to let Texas catch up because the play calling.
Florida's trying to Florida.
Florida was trying to Florida. And the kid on the kickoff said, like, hey, man, just let the ball go in the end zone or catch the ball and run back up the field. When they got the ball on their own 4-yard line, and they can say, man, that's the only way Florida going to lose, doing stupid stuff like this. Terrible play calling. And it was just like, you had the game won.
I have no idea what to expect with that team from quarter to quarter, let alone game
that's
to game.
What I mean.
I have no idea. No.
If you watch most of it, heading in to the last part of that game, Florida was still in complete control of the game. Florida had the ball. They had more than, sizable lead. And then all of a sudden they ran once. Then they passed on second down. It was an incomplete pass. And you're thinking, like, dude, that stopped the clock. Why would you stop the clock? I mean, and then they ran on third down, and you just want to go tell the kid, hey, man, look, I ain't no big-time $1 million college football coach, but if that series of plays,
maybe you should be.
You should have ran the ball twice. Then decide whether or not you're going to pass, because a whole another 40 seconds would have ran over the clock.
Not rocket science.
It's not rocket science.
Now, as far as pure unpredictability goes, though, I'm not sure if the Gators can still hold a candle to whatever is transpiring in UNC. And we have to touch upon it briefly as we close down shop here on the CFC. So here's the latest. Let's follow this, Alvin, okay? We learned yesterday that the Tar Heels off to the ridiculously great 2-3 start. By the way, in the 3 losses,
more than 25 points.
Belichick's Tar Heels have been outscored by a total combined number of 120-33. So there's that. And we hear it leaks that the planned Hulu docuseries, that's no longer happening.
Nope.
So prior to the season, there was a pitch for one presentation, Belichick and company.
HBO.
Next to that. Okay. Now Hulu isn't happening. So we can look forward to any number of statements, prepared or otherwise, from Michael Lombardi in the next few days. And then late yesterday, after all kinds of rumors, conjecture, speculation, it's all boiling over, bubbling over about disarray in the locker room, about assistant coaches apparently not showing up, about assistant coaches maybe being in trouble with other things.
Yeah.
Well, the institution and Coach Belichick issuing a grand joint statement, a statement of unity, Alvin, in which I fully believe and endorse 100%.
No. The speculation, or that it gets out, that the assistant coaches have their agents reaching out to teams that are going to possibly be in the college football playoff, and not to be hired as assistant coaches, but as consultants and whatnot, because they fear that it's going to be all over in the next week or two down there, and they're already trying to jump ship during the season.
If it's true that Belichick was not communicating with assistant coaches and various staffers during that bye week, what's happening?
He was nowhere to be found during the bye week.
Yeah.
If it's true. But there was so much coming out over the last 48 hours that some of this stuff has to be true. And this whole thing, we're like, well, I don't like you if I didn't bring you here. And kids that are in, can transfer. They're like, what? Huh? Mm-hmm. But that whole thing where nobody could find him during the bye week, and apparently Lombardi is mean and sinister to everybody. And I said, you think? Right. You didn't know that was coming?
Yeah, you never knew that.
Right. Everybody hated him when he was in the pros. Right. And you look terrible. Every game you've lost has been by more than 25 points. I mean, just not in those games. It's the disaster. I told y'all it was going to be a disaster.
You did. And Kerry Davis of the Fast Lane. I will admit it. You were right. I was wrong. Week number 1, the toast of the nation, Chapel Hill. Yeah, welcome in TCU. First quarter was great. First drive. It has been a dumpster fire ever since.
I said, I think this is going to be a disaster. I didn't think it would come up. I thought they would lose games. But this whole thing where it really is oh, my gosh. And apparently the Board of Regents had the power to get this guy hired, and the board guy that's the athletic director, who, by the way, is their athletic director is, I think, the NCAA tournament head guy.
Oh, yeah.
It was like you don't think he's got enough on his mind because he's got that basketball team, and now the football team's a laughing stock. And you're like, why on earth did you hire this dude? And he can't come out there and say, like, I didn't hire this dude. The Board of Regents came in and told me we're going to hire Bill Belichick. And like, what could I do? And you see how it's playing out.
Playing favorites. 70-plus new members on the team for this year. Who knows what's going to transpire in the next few months with the lone solitary transfer portal
and
window.
Wouldn't you be up out of there?
Who knows? Oh, can you blame anyone?
Right.
Can you blame anyone?
Like this, I would say there's no way I could come back for another year of this because then it might really, really, really fall apart. What is spring ball going to be like? What is practice in the offseason going to be like? He doesn't look like he don't care about what's going on down here now during the regular season.
I confess, I did not think it could get more irrelevant or porous from a results-oriented standpoint than it was down the stretch under poor Mac Brown.
Yeah.
He was overwhelmed. It was time.
It was time.
Injection of energy, shot in the arm. Nope. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And that's why I think that with Mac Davis, with Mac leaving, okay, there was your chance. Young coach, brilliant mind, maybe not even from Power 4, something like that. We're just like, no, we just need new ideas. We need a new spirit, whatever. So Belichick and company come in, and that same old crap that Charlie Weiss brought to Notre Dame, the schematic was going to do this, and we're just, Lombardi called it the 33rd NFL team. At North Carolina, dude, I go to a school. I follow a school's football program that's a lot like North Carolina's. And if somebody went to Kansas and we're going to be the 33rd NFL team, I'd say, like, man, you high. We're trying to make a bowl game every year.
This is where the bar was set, and here's where it is now.
It's sad.
Now you've got Larry Fedora or John Bunting Part 2, or worse.
Everything. And as, like I say, unidentified coach said, what we've done to these kids is effed up. So how out of control is it down there?
Hard to deny it.
Yeah.
We will see next week if we have another plot twist or two from Chapel Hill. Needless to say, we're going to have quite a bit to chronicle from this weekend.
Is Missouri in the top 10 if they win?
Oh, yeah.
I think so, too.
Oh, yeah.
I think so, too.
Mm-hmm.
I think they jumped 4 spots? 8 spots? Mm-hmm. They're 14, right?
Yep, 14.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they get in.
Alvin, those tiger tails are going to be wagging all the way back from I-70, my friend.
Oh, man, when I was headed to the KU game 3 weeks ago, that might have been UMass Day, whatever. So I was headed over relatively early, and Missouri's game was later, but man, there's a lot of tiger tails headed down to Columbia. That's right. I like it. No matter what I think about them, that's a good thing. That's a cool thing.
And you know what? You have to actually sign off for a bit in a manner of speaking from Como because you have to hit the road effective next week. But we'll get to that when the occasion presents itself.
Finally. I mean, the Missouri ain't going to know what to do play a road
It's about
game.
time. Tigers Crimson Tide recap, Illini-Buckeyes, and so many more. That's next week, guys, on the College Football Connection. But for now, for Alvin, my name is Bradford Bruns. For Marty Jenkins as well, we always appreciate your support, your listening, your consumption on 101 ESPN, the YouTube channel, and 101ESPN.com. Until next time, hey, LGB, go Blues
go
as
Blues,
well.
Yeah.
Keep it locked to 101 ESPN, puck drop at 7, STL and Minnesota. We're back next week.
Thanks for listening to the College Football Connection podcast on 101 ESPN.